Welcome to Encounter, where we celebrate putting faith into action and community leaders who live out compassion, grace, and love. We're a program of the Broome County Council of Churches that addresses food insecurity through CHOW and the Greater Good Grocery, provides hospital and jail ministry, builds wheelchair ramps, and assists neighbors with transportation and shopping services through Faith in Action volunteers. We invite you to the conversation. Encounter your neighbors as we learn to walk together in love and kindness.
Good morning and welcome to Encounter. I'm your host today, Joe Sellepack, Executive Director at the Broome County Council of Churches. Peter Benedum, he was a homeless man, houseless man, who lived in Binghamton most of his life. And he was brutally killed by 5 young people. It's a sad story. It's unfortunately one that keeps repeating itself over and over again in our culture, in our community. And it's one that should never happen. He was a human being. He was somebody who was loved. He was a son, someone who many of us knew and loved. And to help us kind of work through some of the issues that are surrounding the homeless community, as well as the issues with Peter, are two of the ministers who've been very active within the homeless community here recently. We have Kimberly Chastain. She's the senior pastor at United Presbyterian Church. Mm-hmm. Welcome to Encounter, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Encounter, Kimberly. And,
yes.
And Scott Parnell, who is the Reverend Doctor now, Scott Parnell, who is the pastor at Christ Episcopal Church downtown. And we've talked about homelessness. It was some of the issues that came up last summer, but let's start off by talking about Peter and his life and perhaps where the family is right now.
Well, Peter was a guy who had to handle more challenges in his 45 years than anybody should ever have to. He was type 1 diabetic from early in his life. He had 2 kidney transplants and therefore developed some addiction issues as well, but immensely artistic and creative and funny. And he couldn't, he would get to where he just couldn't be around people. One of the reasons he had trouble staying in homing situations was that it would get too people-y, was his expression. It's too people-y here. And he did successfully stay overnight at 2 of the pop-up shelter nights, but that was because we were able to get him a cot separately from the rest of the people staying in January. He wandered in, he wandered out, and he had kind of a circuit that he took, and everybody knew him around the greater Binghamton area because he stopped in to check on people. And so when I saw that he had been attacked, my first thought was, I have mail for him sitting on my desk.
Oh, no.
And he would come in and get his mail because we provide an address for people if they don't have a street address so that they can get benefit information and so forth. That's a different conversation. And we would check in, and he would let me know how things were and tell me what his next great plan was going to be. And it was hard to imagine that could come to an end the way that it did.
Yeah.
You don't want to talk about whether anybody deserves that sort of ending, but that we've built a world where it is possible for a harmless, gentle individual just seems so backwards.
Yeah. So Kimberly, just to fill in some of the blanks, United Presbyterian has a pop-up shelter.
United Presbyterian has been the home of the UP Center, the warming station that ACBC has been running since 2023.
The Addiction Center
of Broome County. They came in and had run a 42-bed warming station since 2023, and they were only open 5 nights a week. So when we got to the bitter, deadly cold in January, and they didn't have the ability to open on the weekends, I started making phone calls, and some of the crazy people in our congregation and in our broader community, we staffed indoor safe housing for 24 hours a day for the 3 weekends that were in the bitter cold. And the community came together in a beautiful way, and we had food donated, and we had bedding donated.
You had bread donated.
Boy, did we have bread donated. At one point, we put out the word that we had enough bread because we had shelves in the pantry that were stacked full, and a guy walked in with, I'll never forget, he had no English at all, but he walked in with 3 bags full of 15 loaves of bread, smiled at me, took a picture of the bread, bowed, and walked back out. And I still have the picture that he took of or that I took after he left, because, you know, you give somebody something specific and concrete to do, and they're grateful.
Yeah.
And we've seen that with Peter's death too, is when there was a vigil, when there have been conversations, when there have been opportunities to plug in a direct and concrete way. His family didn't have the resources to bury him and to cover his end-of-life expenses,
right,
and put up a GoFundMe, and people were very generous in that because they knew they were doing something that was helpful. And that, I think, is the biggest thing about the problem with the unhoused in our community for most people, is nobody knows what to do and they feel helpless.
Or how to help.
Yeah, and people who are unhoused frequently have mental health or hygiene issues that make them scary if you don't know them.
Right, right.
And it's a weird situation where those folks are probably just as scared of you as you are of them, because they are treated badly by people who misunderstand, and they don't want to be in the situation they're in. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, I think I'll live as a homeless person.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's complicated.
It is very complicated. And Scott, so Peter and his family, you have connections to his larger to the larger family. What are some of their needs right now?
I think part of what they need is time to process, right? This is an incredibly unexpected thing that admittedly has taken on a life of its own. And just the ability, again, to recognize that, right, he was their son.
Right.
Right, he was their brother. He was an uncle. And, right, I mean, it was one of those things that I'm in the hospital room with the family, and you watch the mom just grab his hand and say, I'm here.
Yeah.
Right, only a mom can do that. And it's a reminder that that's everybody.
Right.
Everybody has that.
And the stereotype of an unhoused person is that they don't have any family connections. But Peter maintained relationships with his entire family, and loving relationships. And he's not the only one who does that, because there are lots of reasons people aren't in housing, and few of them are because they don't love their family.
We have where the Council of Churches is located is right up against the bank of the river. Right over that bank, oftentimes there are people that will live along the side of the river, homeless folks, and there was this one weekend I pulled up into the parking lot, and there was a woman who was driving up, and I went out to talk to her, and she said, well, you know, I'm here to visit my dad. And her father was one of those people who was living on the side of the bank. And I said, well, you know, what's going on? And she then talked about him having PTSD from the war. There were a number of complications in his life that led him to being involved in being without a house. And so she wanted me to know that people loved him, they cared for him. She brought food with her. That was something that was very, very apparent. And I think that's one of the myths that we have to kind of deal with right now, right? Is the fact that homeless people don't have connections with others. They truly do.
Absolutely.
And you've probably seen that too, right?
In the secondary aspect, which is that, oh, well, they're not from here.
Right.
And that the assumption is that they've just been bussed in. And I've got the list of folks in my cell phone that I have, right? There are numbers for. They've all got family here in Binghamton.
Oh yeah.
Right. They're not from here. They live here, and I think part of, from my sort of vantage point, that when we talk about like ethical decision making, one of the principles is that you have to respect autonomy. You have to respect people's choices. And for someone making a choice of how to survive and sustain their life, that when they are not able to provide a building for themselves, right, that we have to acknowledge that we cannot say the only way to live is to provide yourself a house.
Right.
Right.
Well, and the idea that if you make them uncomfortable enough, they will leave, doesn't take account of the fact that so many of these folks do rely on familial and friend networks for part of their survival.
Right.
And to take them out of the community that is sustaining them is another blow that takes them away from sustainability.
Right.
And so we've got to find ways to integrate folks into our community and say, as I said when I heard about Peter, he's one of ours.
He is.
We have to say, they are ours. They belong to us and we belong to them, and we've got to find a way to acknowledge and establish that relationship in ways that mean something.
Right.
Because othering them hasn't worked.
No.
And in fact, it appears to have made it worse.
Well, yeah, and that's the point that I think is important too, is the fact that, you know, if you have a 15-year-old kid and 13 and 12-year-old kid who did this horrific thing, that stigma that they're reacting to, that aspect of the homeless person as being other or being a problem or however you want to define it. And I've heard all kinds of stuff. Like people have said it was part of a social media thing. There's been, you know, a whole slew of things, and I don't care if it's true or not. But the thing is that somehow homelessness has a stigma that's attached to it, and kids felt free and unencumbered to act in horrific ways against this person.
That's right.
And that's a hard thing for us to keep in mind, right, Scott? I mean, it comes from someplace, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is a pattern where people have been, right, somebody has validated something where this person is less than human and therefore this is an acceptable behavior.
Right.
I mean, I will admit, like, I am from the South, and right, that we're gonna look back on what's happening right now with unhoused individuals, and it will get a name like Jim Crow does, right? Somebody's name will get attached to this, because what we're doing and what we're allowing as a society, we will realize one day is an error.
And what kind of human, like, human rights ought, like we have what we currently see right now as being the way that we treat homeless people, but what are some of the basis, I guess, for human rights that we ought to be honoring as far as that's concerned? Kimberly, do you?
I think we ought to move away from the language of rights.
Okay.
Because that feeds into the language of deserving.
Right.
And we need to talk about what do humans need to live and live well.
Right.
And once you've shifted the conversation to talk about what people need, we all know everyone needs food,
shelter,
shelter, a place to get clean, clothing, you know, and to look at it in terms of, again, distancing it by talking about it as something that is rights or a social service issue or a whatever. It's a community need.
And how do we show that care?
Well, it begins with hospitality. At least at our place, it begins with hospitality. We say and try to live out, everyone is welcome here.
Right.
Well, and I think, right, that we have to acknowledge that, right, there are steps that we can take towards somewhere, but there's also a pretty clear destination that we have to get to, right? In Binghamton, there are 4,300 family units, family units that qualify as extremely low income. We are missing 2,700 extremely low income affordable housing units.
Right.
Right. The problem will not get better until we build that, or until we find a way, an initiative, and a desire to correct that difference. Right. I mean, it is ultimately a housing problem. When we don't have enough physical buildings for people to move into, they will sleep on the riverbank.
Right.
And I would love, I don't know what your church budget is, but I know that mine's not big enough to make a big difference there, right? And so what we do is we step in that way. I mean, it does become a communal thing where we together have to work as a community to say, yeah, we do have a problem, we need to respond. And right, I mean, it's a very, very obvious thing. If you need more houses, you have to build more houses.
Well, and there are initiatives. We, you know, the Southern Door Land Trust, the Southern, what is it, the Broome County
Housing Trust.
Yeah, Housing Trust. There are places where people are starting to envision different things and work toward them, and it seems to me that what we need to do is to be sure that everybody gets invited to the table so that we all know who's doing what, and we can support the efforts already in existence and not reinvent the wheel, and so we can make sure that all of the gaps are covered.
Yeah. My guests today are Reverend Dr. Scott Parnell from Christ Episcopal Church, and Reverend Kimberly Chastain from United Presbyterian Church. Kimberly, if a person wants to get connected, like right now we're dealing with this in-between time between when some of these initiatives that you've been talking about from the land bank and from the Broome County, the Broome County housing issues that we're kind of currently working through, but your pop-up shelter at United Presbyterian, and how could people help? Well.
The Warming Center right now is open 5 nights a week, and it's run by the Addiction Center of Broome County. But we also have a pantry and a clothing closet and a community meal, and we can use volunteers for those all the time. We're shifting over. The warming station will be open 7 nights a week and will be under the administration of the church effective July 1st, and that is when we will be eager to have people involved in helping us put together a new model of how that shelter is going to look, because we know some of what we need to do. We need to make sure that everybody has a bed and food and access to the bathrooms and the showers and the hygiene products. And from there, we know that they're going to need contact in the community and connection to agencies and congregations and other people who can help them see beyond the moment that they're in at the time.
So a lot of things go into actually operating this.
Oh, yes.
So it's more than just giving a person a bed. I mean, you've got laundry issues, you've got food issues, you've got like you said, the connection to services,
Yeah.
phones, making sure that people are cared for and safe, safety issues that kind of come up to play within this. So there's a lot of different things. And how, if a person wanted to volunteer and to help with this, how would they best communicate that with you?
Well, one way is to contact Binghamton United Presbyterian or Christ Episcopal. There is a, what was the agency you were showing me the information from today? It came from the Housing Coalition.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, there are lots of ways to plug in, and
so they could
but if they talk to me, I can find them ways to plug in.
What's the
if they can't, I can't plug them into me.
What's the phone number that they should call?
607-722-4219.
And what's your phone number, Scott?
607-722-2308.
All right, and so if they call those numbers, they can get through to either one of you,
Parish administrator
administrator, and then maybe would there be a website that they could go to for United Presbyterian as well?
upcbgm.org.
Okay.
And what's yours?
ChristchurchBinghamton.org.
And there they could probably send an email to you and be able to try to connect. I know that's how I've connected with you, is just go through your website. The administrator will forward me on to you, and then we usually get connected that way.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes on within the helping serve people.
Oh, yeah.
That we need to really be looking at it, and that's one of the ways, like this distance that kind of exists between the homeless and houseless people on the one side, and then the rest of us who view them as a stigma or
Just
whatever.
don't realize how much creativity and skill goes into surviving in a world where you don't have a home base.
Right.
You know, we all tend to think of them as people who need so much and who will take from us, but they also have gifts and skills and abilities that can give back.
Right.
And that's what we lose sight of as long as we see them as a problem instead of as people.
Right. And one of the ways that we get through that space that's between people is by serving and by being involved with them. Have you found that to be true with your congregation, Scott?
Oh, absolutely. Last summer we had folks that were sleeping on our green space, and that some folks were uneasy about this, other folks wanted to jump right in, which was great. And I found the easiest way was, well, can I go introduce you to everybody? And there was a guy, there was a gentleman who attempted to steal we have a stone angel in our memorial garden. And some guy tried to steal it. And there was a gentleman that was sleeping on the property that chased him down and said, "Hey, give us that back," right? And he came and he put the angel back, and it was a little cockeyed, but it worked well. And I was introducing a member of my congregation, and I said, this is not really something we should be scared of. In fact, I don't know about you, but when folks are there, my campus is never cleaner because we walk around, they take care of it. And I said, here's so-and-so, he actually got us our angel back. And the woman broke down in tears because she said, my sister gave that.
Oh, man.
And it completely changed the outlook. That day she was back with lasagna. And it was just such a simple thing when you can just see the human being right there.
Right.
That all of a sudden, this is not someone to be scared of.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. That we want to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And that we want to see human beings as human beings. I think for me, right, that just do the next right thing.
Right.
Right. The next right thing might just be saying hi.
Yeah.
As you pass somebody walking down the street. I mean, I have not been in the position where I'm walking down the street and people go like this.
Yeah.
So that they don't have to look at me, right? But I can imagine that after a while, one, it would get old pretty quick. Two, I think I'd get pretty bitter. And then I think I'd become pretty resentful. And so we shouldn't be surprised. And how we change that is, again, we say hi.
Yeah, just be human with each other.
Just be human.
And Kimberly, the same question. How has this impacted your congregation and their understanding of homelessness and houseless people?
Well, we serve between 100 and 150 people every week in our community meal, and the same number of families in our pantry. And most of them are people that come every week. And so we get to know them, we get to see them. We have people say, you know, I just heard that I've got X, Y, or Z medical condition. Can you pray for me?
Oh, man.
Sometimes they will pick up books or Bibles in the lobby and, is this okay? Well, sure, that's what they're there for, you know. And realizing that people have more than just their needs as part of their lives is such a huge thing. People come to Bible study and we're glad to see them. People, when we did the pop-up shelters in the bitter cold, again, they did all the cleaning and everything else, but we also met somebody whose fingers were black from the second knuckle all the way to the end, and we thought he was going to lose all of his fingers. His name is Sean, and he came back last night, and he's only going to lose the tips of 5 fingers, 2 on one hand and 3 on the other, and he was so happy. And yeah, I guess that's good news, but it's a world most of us live in every day, and we have to have a certain ability to listen to the difference. And people in our congregation now kind of feel like we live in a different world from a lot of people because it's part of our everyday life. You know, those folks are out there overnight, which means we see them in the morning, we see them waiting for the shelter to open at night, and they belong to us.
Yeah, they do belong to us. Thank you so much for being on Encounter. This has been an amazing conversation. And for all of you, I hope you remember the name Peter Benedum and that you are good and kind and gracious to others. Have a great day. Thank you for being on. This was